So the point was we're talking about access to records and open records, right? And there's a right to know law that provides that you should have access to those documents. My point was that there are other laws that come into play to determine whether you have access to those records. And an example of that is Act 13 under the Oil and Gas Act. And so the Act 13 requires certain records to be kept by the companies, but that doesn't mean that you as the citizen can get to those records unless those records end up in the hands of the government, because the right to know law only applies to you, your access to government records. Public Utility Commission is the one that looks at the data from gas produced. Act 13 exempts the Public Utility Commission records from the right to know law. There are hearings on the determination of how much taxes due. Those hearings are exempted from the Sunshine Act, Pennsylvania Sunshine Act, under Act 13. Everyone knows or has heard about the chemical disclosure provisions in Act 13 and how companies in their slick water or their frac fluids that they have to identify certain chemicals and constituents, but they could claim certain things as being a trade secret or corporate secret. Act 13 obligates DEP to take the side of the corporation. It actually tells DEP it's unlawful for them to release information that's claimed to be trade secret, and it tells DEP that they have an obligation to, quote, ensure, E-N-S-U-R-E, that none of that information, that information is not unlawfully released, improperly released to the public.
The Southwest Regional Office of DEP, I think the problem there is they're overworked and understaffed. I mean, Jeff and Phil and the people in the records department do a good job. They do all they can to help you, but it might take you 6 weeks to get in there to do a file review, an informal file review. So that can be a slow process.
AP has been involved in a multi-year battle trying to get copies of all the complaints that people had submitted to DEP. And we spent fairly substantial amounts of money. I don't think I'm allowed to say or even necessarily know exactly how much we've spent in legal fees. Basically, starting 2 years ago, we tried to get copies of complaints anybody had submitted across the state about drilling impacting their health.
The DEP said, you know what, we don't even have time to look for this stuff because we're so busy, we're so understaffed. We can't look for it. So this is burdensome, it's overbroad. But if we could find it, we haven't looked and we can't find it. But if we did find it, we think that it would be exempt under 14 exemptions. But we don't know because we haven't seen. But we're preserving them. We're saying it. So later on, if we should find them, if you make us look, here are the exemptions. And this is the kind of thing that as a lawyer makes you want to just scream and pull your hair out or pull somebody else's hair out.
You have to remember, and again, some sympathy for officials who are trying to deal with this. We've had generations of kind of this bad attitude, from our perspective, about open records. They didn't have to give you anything. So that's the way officials think in Pennsylvania. It's only been a little over 4.5 years since the new law went into effect. And when I give presentations, I'm always talking about, well, the law is really good, but what we really need is an attitudinal change. And that just doesn't happen overnight, even 4 years. There's just a lot of resistance.
Add, related to that, one of our reporters in Harrisburg asked for Governor Corbett's daily schedules of who he'd met with. And that was met with basically a countersuit by the administration directed at the reporter himself personally. When countersuits are filed against reporters just seeking information, it makes our job very, very difficult, and we're doing the best we can, but slows the whole process down.
The Commonwealth Court has had a number of cases involving the Department of Environmental Protection and its refusal to give documents.
The final, after a year and a half of back and forth and considerable legal fees, the ruling went in AP's favor, But as part of the settlement, the state said, well, this is so much work, we don't have the staff to just give it to you. It's going to take us another 6 months to give it to you. So we're going to give it to you in little pieces. And right now we have reporters trying to analyze the little pieces.
This administration, the Corps of Administration, which I was under for 8 months, was more Nixonian than I had ever experienced, I would say. And that's how, people described it. And just Republican friends we've talked about it that way. The people that were in Harrisburg and I was in Pittsburgh, I mean, we both sort of sit down and described it the same way. I mean, there's Secretary Crancer and this administration, and I don't know whether because Tom came from the AG's office and that's how he, was used to doing business or what, that they're just secretive. They don't believe in transparency. They talk it, but I mean, that's just been my experience.
We just came from this People's Right to Know session. What did you get out of that session? What were your thoughts about that?
Well, I'm not an expert on law, and the one thing that I got out of it was that very few people in the either on the podium or in the audience realize the amount of effort and time it takes on the part of an agency like the DEP to satisfy public needs. The people themselves have to rise up and say, this is worth spending the money to make sure that it's done.
Do you think is it worth it?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt that the industry would be helped, the welfare of the people would be helped, just everyone across the board would be helped with more transparency. I think there's probably less that's trying to be that needs to be protected now than is protected.